Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, the Warriors survive the Raptors, but Steph Curry goes down in the process. We got Marcus Thompson here to talk about that and a little bit around the night that was. And I caught up with Jared Weiss to talk a little bit about the Celtics sale. $6.1 billion, folks. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Marcus. Appreciate you staying up late there after the Warriors beat the Raptors. Look,
this
the biggest
Coast,
news.
It ain't late.
It's late. Listen, it's late to me, man. I like to sleep. The biggest news from the game isn't that the Warriors won. Look, they're supposed to win. They're supposed to beat the Raptors. As a matter of fact, we could maybe get into why this game was so close. But the biggest news, with about 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the third quarter, Steph Curry fell just directly on his backside. And it was one of the louder falls that I've heard on an NBA broadcast. You were in the arena. You were talking to these guys post game. What's the latest right after the game on Steph and his butt?
And his butt. Let's talk about Steph's butt.
Usually it's Kyle Lowry when we're having these conversations.
Exactly right. First off, man, that thing he fell hard. Like, we heard that in the arena. It's one of them falls where the moment it happens, you immediately react. Like, your body's like, ooh, like, yeah, that hurt. And he definitely felt it. He was down. Now, good news. The good news coming out of it afterwards is Steve Kerr says Steph was trying to get back in the game. Right. And perhaps in another scenario, he would have been able to play. But Rick Celebrini, the Warriors head of sports performance, he don't play around with this stuff, right? He's the most cautious, and he's like, yeah, nah. So now the question becomes, he's having an MRI. He had one immediately after the game, so we'll get the results from that. But the question was he thinking about coming back because it wasn't that bad? It's just like a bruise, or was he trying to come back because the adrenaline was kicking, and after the adrenaline wears off, we'll know how bad this thing was. We've seen both scenarios with Steph. He has a lot of pride, Dave. A lot of pride. He just doesn't. He hates leaving games. He hates being hurt. It's all like PTSD from the early part of his career when he was always hurt. So if Steph can play, he's going to try to play. So more on playing later, perhaps.
In a minute.
He's going to try to play, so they have to protect him from himself a lot. I see them holding him out at least until the Tuesday game in Miami, because that'll give them they've got several days until Jimmy Butler's return. It's going to be tough to keep him off the court for that one.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to want to be there for that. Let's talk a little bit about the game, because the Warriors did wind up winning this. It was 117-114. And I said, look, it was closer than it needed to be. And part of that was because of the strategy that the Raptors employed. And, we're seeing the Andre Robertson defense come back, where it's pick the worst shooter on the other team, make them shoot. Draymond Green goes 5 of 14 from 3 in this game. And this is another game. It's now a trend. They're letting Draymond shoot, and he's just letting it fly. I think, number one, that's a great thing. He's got to shoot. That's a big problem.
That's
if he
what
doesn't.
Jimmy said, yeah.
Right? He's got to shoot him, and especially this is the other thing, because Jimmy Butler's out there, and the space that he likes to operate and create from, it interferes a little bit with the space that Draymond likes to operate in offensively sometimes. So I think this game is a pretty good example of how these guys can actually work together if Draymond's willing to shoot. What'd you think about what we've seen from them between the game without Steph, where they get a win, and then this game where they finish without Steph and pick up the win? What do you think about that so far, making up for Steph's absence?
It's a little odd, because I feel like these are games where, as old as they are, you might want to put teams away and chill out in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
And look, I'm not saying Steph got hurt because it was a close game. But if you are much more comfortably ahead, you can start sitting guys, and you can avoid exposure to this type of stuff. But as it was, Steph is driving in a game that they're down, and he's got to try to figure out a way to make something happen, right? And to me, that's the type of thing that you would think, hey, just beat these guys. And we've seen this the entire time, even with Jimmy. Even though they win just about all of these games, say for against Denver, It's a fight. It's a fight to the end. So on one hand, it's like you got a 37-year-old, two 35-year-olds. You might want to put some teams away. You might not want to let the Raptors shoot 60% from the field most of the game.
Yeah.
The other part is, look, they got not a lot of new parts. Not only is Jonathan Kuminga basically new after missing, 30 games. Jimmy is new. Quinten Post is now basically in the rotation, so that's kind of new. And now they're all just learning how to win together. So the other part is like, yeah, they kind of might need these type of games. So it's a bit of a catch-22. I don't know how to play it, I guess we'll know later, like if this is bad or if this is like what they need. But they also just really got to get comfortable with what to do without Steph, because I've been saying this all year. The dude is 37, and you can forget that just because the way he played, the way he moves, but injuries last a little bit longer. He's dealing with back. He's dealing with knee tendonitis. You just got to be smart about it. He shouldn't be playing 75 games anyway. So at some point, he's going to have to sit a couple. At some point, Draymond's going to have to sit a couple. At some point, Jimmy's going to have to sit a couple. And how do they operate with that? It's not as smooth as you would think with Jimmy when Steph is out. You thought it would be, they got their number 2, right? It's good.
No, I didn't think it would be, actually, Marcus. I thought it would be tricky.
I actually listened to you on that. A lot of people think, hey, you get another superstar, it's good, but Jimmy's not that kind of player.
Right. But the thing is, he's a great player. The ball's never going to get stuck. He's one of the highest level connectors in the NBA. Like, it's usually guys that,
like Steve Kerr.
I know, but it's one of the guys, but the thing is, the space he operates in, with him, and when you get Draymond and you get Kuminga out there at the same time, like we saw the other night. I mean, Gary Payton II was out there. That to me felt like Steve Kerr saying, hey, you know what? You guys, we're going to run into this at some point. We got to figure this out. So just go do it. And I think they've done okay. Part of that is that you've got Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green as two of the highest IQ guys when it comes to just knowing spots to be on the court on both ends. Those guys down the stretch defensively both made a play to win the game. Draymond Green breaks up that one transition pass that was for an alley-oop. Jimmy Butler gets a big block at the rim.
He pulled out the hops for that day. He was up there.
That was impressive to me, Marcus. Like, this is the sort of stuff that I'm putting in my notebook, and I'm saying, all right, now the Warriors have two guys that can do this defensively and not just Draymond all the time. And that's where I think that their ceiling is limitless. It's the defensive end. The offense, because of the spacing concerns, I do think Steph obviously has to be out there. But I don't know that they have a solution. And Quinten Post going 6 of 9 from 3 is a great sign. That's awesome. But like, Marcus, do you think Quinten Post come playoff time is a guy that's going to be getting like minutes because he can make shots? I mean, that feels like that's a stretch.
Dude, you know why? He's an older rookie.
Yeah.
He's not 19, 20. Like, the dude is 20.
He's Dutch like too, by the way. Yeah. So he's like well seasoned as a human being.
No question. Yeah. He's 24 going on 30.
Right.
Like, there was a moment, he's a rookie. He just really started playing. It's a close game. He's at the free throw line, and he turns to the crowd, and he gets everybody up. It's like, hey, like, he ain't scared of the moment. He'll talk after he hits a three. And look, the dude is a shooter. Like, he's a real shooter. Like, he's a legit shooter. He's knocking them down if you give it to him. So I think he's going to play. They just love the way he competes. To me, they're better. Like, when Steph is out of the game, the IQ part you're talking about plays to their advantage, because now you basically got a straight up defense. You know what I'm saying? So
that's right.
It's not a gimmick. So they can kind of manipulate that. The difficulty is when Steph is out there and now he's being face guarded and all the hell, everybody's just so cued in to what to do. Like, it hurts them when Steph is not there sometimes, right? It discombobulates them in a sense. So I think that helps. My big question offensively for them is, this was Kevin Durant's thought process. You're not going to trick good defense in the playoffs.
Right.
You're not going to get timely buckets because you waited long enough for a mistake. At some point, you just have to beat your man. right? And we just haven't seen Jimmy do a lot of that. He's like, he crushes matchups like crazy. If he's got a matchup, he's crushing you, and he's going to make the right play. But we've seen a lot of end the shot clock grenades because they're moving it, they're waiting it, they're pump faking. Nobody can turn the corner. And it's like, if we just stick to it long enough, at some point they'll make a mistake. And if they don't, you got the hand grenade. I want to see Jimmy say, you know what? I don't care who's in front of me. I'm about to get 30.
I don't think he's got it yet.
That guy.
I don't know if it's because he's not quite in full basketball shape yet, because he did miss a lot of time, but he may just not have it. I saw him in the game last night. He had the ball on the empty side, and he tried to get a drive, and he kept getting cut off. And look, that's going to happen quite a bit, especially when you're playing the Raptors. They've got some quick guys that can stay in front of you. I'm of the opinion that Jimmy Butler can play a little bit like Steph when Steph's not on the court, but inside the 3-point line. Santos had a great pass to Steph. They were top locking Steph. Steph works to get on the inside, right? Like they're front guarding, and he gets that little layup by essentially like faking the upcut and going back. I think Jimmy Butler does so many of those things so well that there's stuff there that he can do off the ball, even when Steph's not on the court, to create some buckets.
No question. I agree with that 1,000%. Yep.
All right. That's a lot of Warriors talk, but it's Marcus Thompson. That's what we got to do. Hey, Marcus, look, let me fill you in. The Knicks lost to the Spurs last night. My guy Mamu just went off. He had one of the greatest games in under 20 minutes that you possibly have. LaMelo Ball went off against the Knicks, and the Hornets somehow beat them. And it wasn't even close. 115-98. LaMelo Ball goes 5 of 10 from 3. LaMelo Ball was dancing on these guys. And look, they don't have Jalen Brunson, but the playoffs are coming up. The Knicks are supposed to be a serious contender. You can't be losing to San Antonio with no De'Aaron Fox and no Wemby, and then going to Charlotte and letting LaMelo Ball do stuff like this. I mean, I think that I'm at the point where the Knicks are having a really nice season, but man, I don't trust them.
I mean, they're untrustworthy. Why should you trust them?
Did
Draymond break the Knicks, by the way?
Oh, no.
They haven't been the same since everybody said what's up to him after his beef with Cat. That was the talking point, right? Like him and Cat going at it, they arguing. Draymond gets the game winner and, nights him. Cat walks off the court, and then half the Knicks roster spins and sit there like, saying what's up to Draymond, hugging Draymond. Since then, they've taken 2 brutal losses. It's like, hey, don't let Draymond find out he broke the Knicks. But isn't this kind of the Knicks though?
Without Brunson, it is, right? So their issue right now is it's the offense. Deuce McBride just not stirring the drink enough, and then frankly, like Karl-Anthony Towns puts up 24 points, but they don't have the defense around the basket, right? So then the 3-pointer opens up, and you wind up with this situation where Charlotte goes 15 of 32 from 3. And you can chalk this up to, hey, you know what? They had a great shooting night. And they did.
They did.
But it's the Hornets. Like, you still should be able to withstand that if you're the Knicks and find a way to win.
I don't know. I think, oddly enough, I think the Knicks are a much more playoff team. They're much more playoff.
You just
team.
think that they're just focused. That's it. They just get to the playoffs. They're going to be fine.
Number one, I do think the minutes are a problem. And without the adrenaline of playoffs, of Madison Square Garden going crazy, of the big road matchup. Like, none of that's happening in Charlotte, right? Like, none of that's happening. Matter of fact, let me make sure. They were in Charlotte. That's right. Yeah, none of that's happening in Charlotte, right? So I do feel like their team makeup, though, like Josh Hart's value elevates in a postseason matchup, half court to half. Like, some of that stuff I do think they'll figure it out. Mikal Bridges being able to lock in on a guy for a series, to me, that type of stuff, they're more built for that. Now, they're not built to like beat Cleveland, or Boston. Yeah. But I think the better part of the Knicks is much more built for the playoffs. I can see them, especially without Brunson, and just not having the energy or the cachet to say, let's just go impose our will on Charlotte. But, you get them in a series. Like, I just feel like that's what they're built for, right? And
right.
I feel much better about them upsetting the team in the playoffs than I'd feel about them like winning regular season games they should win handily, because they're not mature enough for that as a basketball team, I don't think.
Yeah, I think they need Jalen Brunson he needs to be healthy. Otherwise, they would have a scary first round series if he's not 100%, especially if they wind up catching the Pistons, because they're really good.
It might be scary for them if they catch the Brunson. Right.
All right, before we go to break, quickly, the Bucks blew out the Lakers, or at least it was sort of the Lakers. The Lakers were without 5 of their top 6 scorers in the game. Bronny James scored 17 points. If you want to know what kind of night it was for the Lakers, Luka sat, Austin Reeves sat, obviously LeBron and Rui both out still. Dorian Finney-Smith was out. Jared Vanderbilt was out. Damian Lillard missed the game on a night where we watched 37-year-old Steph Curry laying his body on the line, laying his tail on the line, Marcus.
I see what you did there.
Well, how come, is this the problem that people when they're talking load, man? It's not. It's just the Lakers were just okay to throw this game away.
You know what? To me, this whole idea of Kawhi Leonard, right? That's the one-off of a guy who just has chronic issues, right? Or Steph is going to sit a game, or LeBron's going to sit a game. I don't think that's the problem. To me, games like this is the problem. When you literally show up to a game and nobody's playing, nobody on a team full of stars in Los Angeles, by the way, you're in LA. And look, God bless Bronny James, who pulled up, you know what I'm saying? Dropped a smooth little 17, played 30 minutes. And he's got some star quality to him. You saw something. But there's a lot of this in the NBA, or not a lot. It's just a little bit more than you would want. To me, this is a much bigger issue that on any given night, you might show up and see the G League affiliate playing. It's just too much. It's too much to say, yeah, you know what? Everybody's sitting. We're not doing this. And you know what? Shout out to Dave, though, because if I'm looking across the lineup and I'm seeing nobody, I'm sitting down too.
And it worked out for the Bucks, maybe that closed door meeting with Dame and Giannis and Doc, they were like, hey, look, if these guys are resting, we'll take the night off.
Hey, the Warriors did not do that when Jokic and Jamal Murray sat. And they played everybody. Probably should have
Huge mistake in hindsight. Marcus, thanks for hanging out with me. Guys, stick around after the break. Jared Weiss and I went pretty deep on the sale of the Celtics, and I got him to tell me what he thinks that it means for NBA expansion.
Hey, man, I had $5.9 billion, and they sunned my offer, man. I had the offer. I don't know why they're going to come over top me like that.
You can't mess with that private equity money.
Shady, man.
We had some big news yesterday on the business side of basketball, and here to talk about it with me, one of my favorite people to talk about basketball with, Jared Weiss. He covers the Celtics, amongst other things, for The Athletic. Jared, thanks for joining us. The Celtics have sold for how much money?
Record $6.1 billion. That's billion with a B.
A lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. So talk to me about what exactly is happening with the Celtics. Okay, they're being sold. There's a new owner. They're not going to be moved or anything like that. It's the Boston Celtics. So fill me in on kind of the details of the sale and then who the new owner is.
Yeah, so it's funny because Wyc Grousbeck, who's the managing governor of the Celtics, when he announced that he was putting the team up for sale after they won the championship, very shortly after they won the championship, it was like parade, and then I think the next day was the sale announcement. He said that he was going to sell the majority stake around this time, early 2025, and then complete the deal in 2028, and was going to retain management control until that point in 2028. And we all kind of laughed at that because we're like, Adam Silver has already shot this stuff down. We just saw this go. We saw the 2-phase sale blow up in their face in Minnesota. We just saw Mark Cuban try to do the I'm still in charge thing, and then he disappeared, and he didn't acknowledge he was disappeared until the Luka trade happened, and then he proudly was telling everybody, oh, I'm not in charge anymore. That was all them. And so Wyc appears to have gotten his wish with this, which is just, I can't believe that he pulled this off. But the deal First 51% gets done. They're going to close this deal in a few months once they dot all the T's, cross all the I's, draw all the commas between the zeros. And then in 2028, he will be in charge of the team through that year, and then the sale will complete and he will not be a part of it anymore. And it will be fully Bill Chisholm in his group. And he's a local guy from northern Massachusetts, the North Shore, if you know Massachusetts at all. Grew up a Celtics fan. He went out west and made a lot of money as a private equity guy, and now he's coming back east to buy his boyhood club.
Yeah, I spent a fun weekend in Gloucester once and went on an old wooden boat. But
Gloucester's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so one of the other contributors to the purchase of the team is a private equity group that has ownership in 3 other NBA teams. Now, look, that stuff seems fishy to me. Anytime you throw out private equity, I'm thinking about Joanne Fabrics. Somehow 97% of their stores are profitable, and yet they're in bankruptcy. So allay my fears with private equity getting involved with another NBA team.
I mean, they have a small enough share that they appear to not have managerial responsibility. Mm-hmm. So it's maybe they're shorting the value or something like that. Who knows? Or they're going long on the value, presumably.
Probably
right?
Not, because these teams. Yeah. I mean, how much the team was purchased for $360 million. And is selling for $6.1 billion. So when I look at the private equity getting involved in sports, to me, it's just, well, that actually is a place where if you park some money, it seems like you're going to make it. So the weirder part is just the league allowing this group to actually invest in 3 separate teams. It does kind of feel as if that's a murkier gray area.
And that's why the guardrails on managerial responsibility have to be really strong, right? Because they have conflicts of interest. And so, they have the Spurs, right? And the Spurs are a team that a couple years from now, hopefully will be competing and maybe competing against the Celtics if they're able to somehow keep at that level. So, I don't know how that's supposed to be handled fairly reasonably. Sovereign wealth funds are also starting to buy in. They're able to get up to 20%. That seemed like something that could have happened in this deal. It appears not to have, as far as we know now. Who knows? But if they had a large enough stake, that probably would have been announced as well. So who knows? We'll see. But this is how a lot of deals get done. Most deals get done where it's a large investor who may not even have 50%. Few other people in like the 10s or maybe the 20s, and then like a bunch of small names too to round it out. A lot of ownership groups are like 50 people or something like that. So it's kind of inevitable you're going to get private equity involved. I thought it was funny that Steve Pagliuca, when he made his announcement that he wasn't the one who won it, and he's the current co-owner of the Celtics, he was considered the favorite by a lot of reports in the last few months to retain the team. He mentioned in his letter to the fans that his proposal was all financing and I guess cash. And so there wasn't going to be debt taken on. There wasn't going to be private equity involved. And so he, and that's, I guess, to say that this was going to be a more reliable cash transaction. There was going to be more control over the future of the franchise and things of that nature. And so he wanted to make that point, but also keeping in mind he was the vice chairman of Bain Capital. So it's like
right, yeah.
A lot of these people involved have their fair share of private equity blood on their hands. But
thou dost protest too much.
Yeah, but Pagliuca is one of the best owners that we've seen in this league. Yeah. He's been great. They have been the paragon of consistent success and quality management in this league in a way that very few teams have over the course of like 20 years now.
Yeah. Oh, well, if the Celtics had sold or any part of it to a sovereign wealth fund, the league would have had to answer questions that it just hasn't had to face with the Wizards and their kind of affiliation with the sovereign wealth fund. Let's get to the basketball part of this because the business side is going to affect that. What does this mean for how the team is going to be run in the next few years? I mean, you say that Wyc Grousbeck is going to continue to be, essentially the figurehead of the team. Brad Stevens, assuming, is still going to be running the basketball side for years to come. Do you expect any sort of changes with new management, essentially, or new ownership, I should say?
Well, that's the big question is, they have a pretty small front office. Remy Cofield, who is, I guess, number 4 on the org, or number 5 on the org chart, he's leaving to be the GM in Arkansas now for their college program. So they already have one opening. Maybe there's more shuffling around. Austin Ainge was, I think, one of the finalists for the Charlotte Hornets job last year that went to Jeff Peterson. So he'll continue to interview. So they're probably going to need more people with senior level experience in their front office anyway. But the top of the org chart, where it's Brad Stevens and it's Mike Zarin, there's no reason to believe that will ever change. Brad is one of the most respected people in the basketball world, and he's clearly proven that his approach has worked very well. I can't imagine that there's anything that could happen that would take him out of that position, out of his own volition, that isn't out of his own volition. And, I reported earlier today in our report on The Athletic that he was interviewing the finalists when the bidding was happening once they got to that final stage. Like, it was part of it was for him to meet with them. And I would imagine that Groesbeck and the ownership group that was selling, they probably wanted to make sure that whoever they sell to is going to keep Brad around, because if there's anything that they can do to make sure that the franchise is in good hands after they make the sale, it's to make sure that Stevens is still running the ship.
Yeah. What about on the court? Right after you mentioned the sort of timeline of events, win the title, put the team up for sale. And then right after that, they locked all these guys up to long-term big money contracts. We know the new CBA, I guess at some point we got to just start calling it the CBA that we live under right now. The repeater tax just gets to be tremendous by the time you get into year 3 and year 4. Do you expect this team to stick around, or do they have to win a title to run this back next season?
I do wonder if that matters so much, is that they got to look at these individuals, because if they're going to break this team apart, it's not like you shatter the whole thing. You're just swapping out some pieces. You're just trying to reduce salary, to reduce tax burden, maybe even get out of the second apron in a year or two so they can start resetting some of those penalties down the road with the draft picks. So I think the most interesting deal that they did last year was they signed Drew Holiday, who is going to turn 35 in a few weeks. He's actually a day older than me. So now I'm feeling old, and my knee is hurting a little bit right now after doing some yoga. So I can empathize with the fact that Drew Holiday is getting older. And they signed him to a long-term deal. It was a good value deal, but it's still a lot of money. It's like $26 million a year on average or something like that for 4 years. So they're signing this guy until his late 30s. This year, he's had a shoulder issue, and it's been affecting his shot all year. He has not been himself offensively at all. And so they could win a title next year, and then they still decide Drew is just not going to be healthy and be himself for the length of his contract. It's worth us biting the bullet and dumping him for whatever we can, whether it's short-term money or even find a way to get off of him entirely, which probably is not possible with his salary, but who knows, just to deal with the tax bill. And they live with the fact that they still have Derek White in his prime. You have Peyton Pritchard starting to enter his prime and like really turning the corner into being a pretty high level starting caliber player at this point. Like, he seems like a starter on any contender kind of level player at this point. And he's only making like $7 million a year. The contract they got him to is ridiculous. So they get rid of Drew, they get rid of KP, and they find a way to develop a center, which they have currently nobody in the pipeline to be their legitimate starting center in the future. So that's an issue they have to figure out, because Horford presumably will retire at some point, or maybe he'll just die of old age while still in a Celtics uniform 50 years from now. Who knows? But Luke Cornett, Nemish Queta, Xavier Tillman, all guys you can put in your rotation, but they're not going to win with those guys as their starters. So they need a solution at starting center. And Porzingis, relatively healthy as far as since he came back from his ankle surgery this year, aside from this mystery virus that kept him out for a few weeks, he's been fairly healthy. But we know the story with KP at this point. We just don't know how he's going to hold up, especially over a playoff run. And he's heading to the other side of 30. And guys of his size that have these lower body injuries, they can lose their pop very quickly. So Porzingis not looking like a 10-year play at this point. They're looking at keeping him until his late 30s the way they were with Drew Holiday. So maybe that's how they do this. They don't have to trade Jaylen Brown and stick to one Supermax player. If you can have two Supermax players that are worth it, you don't get rid of that. That's the holy grail of team building here. They know that those guys are good because they just won a championship. Like we don't need to overthink this whole Jays thing. It's really worked. It's a question of, would Jalen want something different? Would Tatum want something different? Probably not. And I think it's pretty clear that Tatum is the guy if they have to choose anybody, just because of how completely well-rounded his game is at this point. But so like, I don't think they have to they don't have to completely blow these things up. They can take out some of the older guys, which is what you're supposed to do when you're trying to sustain a contender. And Brad Stevens had like made it a point during the summer last year to say, we're looking at this as like a 10-year thing, and there's going to be ups and downs over the course of that 10 years to try to be consistently competitive, which I think implies that a lot of these guys that they love, they might have to dump them in order to manage the salary and build back up.
Yeah. Quickly before we get out of here, this sale of the Boston Celtics has been looming, since the summer. $6.1 billion. It's a great anchor for the NBA, for franchise owners. But what about for the league, and this being the first domino in an expansion move, right? You now have this $6.1 billion mark. I assume that we're starting at $5 billion for a new franchise at this point, now that you've established this level. Do you think that we're going to see the expansion talks get heating up as we go into the summer?
It all hinged on this. I remember hearing probably 3 or 4 months ago that some of these bids for the Celtics were coming in under $5 billion, and the league was sweating because if one of the 3 marquee franchises, maybe we can put the Warriors up there at this point, 4 marquee franchises in the NBA is fetching less than what you want your franchise fee to be, you're in huge trouble. It's got to clear that by a bill, and that's what they got. Yeah. So if they want a $5 billion fee for each of these teams, and presumably at this point Vegas and Seattle, they needed the Celtics to clear that $6 billion hurdle, ideally break that record for North American teams, which they did. And now the NBA can be like, look at that, everybody. Our last sale broke the record. We need to be breaking records here. We need earth-shattering prices if you want to put your team in Seattle, put your team in Las Vegas. I'd love Mexico City. That would be pretty great. Or even London.
Logistically, it's not going to work.
Yeah, but I love the food in Mexico City is the best. So hopefully one day. But this is a huge win for the NBA. This is a huge win for all the other owners because when the expansion fee goes to all of them, right? So this is huge because they can get that revenue in there. It can help offset some of the money that they probably didn't get in the TV deals that they were hoping for. So it's we're like a little bit below what they were hoping for. And then obviously just like getting into Vegas is going to be big for the league financially. Might be terrible for the rest of humanity, but it's at least good for the people that own stock in the NBA.
Yeah. And a return to the Seattle media market, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. At least Kevin Pelton will be happy.
Yeah, let's not forget those franchise fees. The owners and the league do not share that as a part of basketball related income with the players. They get to keep that pie. That's a pretty nice pie. I'd have a slice of that. Jared, thank you so much. Appreciate your work. Again, guys, go and read him at The Athletic. He's going to be covering this story. It's not over yet. And I think as expansion looms, Jared's probably going to be on that beat too. Thanks to Marcus Thompson for joining me in the first part of the show. That's going to do it for today. Thank you guys for listening. As always, this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.